Hello, everybody. I wanted to take you through a little deck tech today. My mono green deck, my Gilanra, and Kodama, the East Tree deck. This is one of my higher powered decks for my standpoint, at least. Um, I tend not to play too much in the CEDH category, but this is one of the two closest that actually get to that. Um, so Gilanra is a monodork basically that whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater, draw a card. And Kodama, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. And they both have partners, so they can be played together. Basically, my idea for this deck was just to go ahead and make a big mono green Stompy deck. I actually had Gorkwa originally as the commander, but I just felt that it really wasn't as explosive as it needed to be. So I tried it with these two, and it's worked out pretty well. I play like at the local card shop that's near my house, and I play with my friends. They have some pretty spicy decks. One of them has a few $1,000 Croxa deck that's built really well. There's an Urza and many others that are very good. And my mono green deck sometimes can just kind of storm off and catch everybody off guard at the table. So there are some cards that I'm still trying out in here. I pretty much built this deck myself. I just kind of used cards that I thought were good and kind of threw them in here, so I'm still play testing some cards. So for instance, I have Vivian Monster's Advocate in here. Allows you to look at the top card of your library at any time, cast creature spells from the top of your library. It's got a +1 to create a 3/3 beast that you're probably not going to do. There's really no point. Mostly, she's in here for the -2. When you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. As you'll see once I start to get into the creatures, this can get pretty out of hand. Not to mention that Kodama will also trigger off of this also. So you'll be able to downtick her, cast a spell, then you can search, and then you can place 2 permanents down from your hand with lesser converted mana costs. Or equal with Kodama, actually. So you can really lead to some explosive turns that, if you already have the creatures you need, can pretty much win you the game. And if you're just trying to set up a board state, you can deal some real damage. So you'll see a big theme in this is that because Gilanra gives me the draw off of 6 or greater, I try to use as much 6 or greater as I can. That one draw can really make a big difference. I've had a lot of games come down to me just getting a draw off of Gilanra and then being able to drop something devastating down. So, when it comes to lower creatures, my buddy got me an Allosaurus Shepherd, and I figured it's a good fit for here, so I have it in here. I really don't use the bottom of the ability, so it's not necessary to have in the deck, really. But it helps out because green spells you control can't be countered. This can really help out when you go for the win, and your opponents are already in a situation where there's not much that they could do. Arbor Elf and Wana War Elves, they pretty much help you get some ramp. Circle of Dreams Druid and Wana War Tribe, they can really get you a surprisingly large amount of mana once you're kind of situated. You'd be surprised at how fast this deck can actually go and build a board state. I've had as fast as turn 5 or 6, I just have too many creatures and I swarm the board and kill everybody. Selvala could be the commander of the deck, honestly. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than other creatures' power. So, mostly I'm going to be the one drawing off of this. Not many people are going to be playing creatures bigger than I am. Or at least I don't see that often. And then one green tap it, add X mana in any color combination of colors where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. I've like I said, quite a few high cost creature or high powered creatures in here. So you can get a lot of green mana and then just pump right into the board. Druid Purification is really good to drop on the Kodama trigger or just in general. It's mono green, so this can really help get rid of a few things. Plus, you're sitting at the table with 3 other people. They can't choose your things, so it's going to get down to an argument between them over what they want to get rid of. Goreclaw, perfect for the deck. Makes creature spells of power 4 or greater, cost 2 less, which almost all the creatures are, and then gives +1/+1 and trample until the end of turn when you go to when he attacks. You're basically with this deck setting up for a fast play where you're going to trample over everybody, so this is going to work perfect for you. Yeva, Nature's Herald. Can't spell name. I can't say names, so I'm sure you'll catch on to that here pretty soon. But it's a flash creature that gives all green creature cards flash. So I haven't actually played this yet. I just got it. It was at the damage bin at my local card shop, so I was able to pick this up, and I think it's going to be pretty devastating in here, especially with Kodama out, or I can cast Kodama, so it's going to be pretty hard to get around that. Aggressive Mammoth, just a really nice one to drop or cast with Kodama. Once you have a couple creatures out, people kind of like, oh, I don't know what he's going to drop. Well, you drop the Aggressive Mammoth, you know that you're getting that trample damage through. Earthshaker Giant, you'll see a few cards that are like this. ETB, give +3/+3 and trample to all other creatures you control. It can be devastating to drop this, especially if you already have a few creatures and then you drop Aggressive Mammoth or anything else. I mean, it's going to be hard to get around that. That's 2 forms of trample, so helps out quite a bit. This guy, he's just a big guy. He gets bigger off the number of forests. And when he enters, you put a green Treefolk Warrior creature token on the battlefield. Does the same thing. He's really good. He's budget, which I really like about it. Plus, I already have many forms of trample, so he could easily be over 10. So 6 mana, you get 20 power out of it. Not to mention any of the other shenanigans going on. It's really nice. Kogla, the Titan Ape. When he enters the battlefield, he fights 1 target creature you don't control. Whenever he attacks, you destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. You could pay 2 and return a human you controlled, make him indestructible. It's not very likely in this deck, but I guess it could matter. Really, he's in there because you could play him, fight something, get rid of something that's bothersome or maybe causing you trouble. And then when he attacks, you can also get rid of an artifact and enchantment. Again, I try to run as much removal on creatures as I can, even though it's 6 CMC and above for most of the cards. Dropping him down can make a big difference in the game. Primordial Sage, 4/5. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card. The more cards that you have in your hand for Kodama, the better it's going to be for you. Rampaging Baloths, 6/6 trample. Whenever land enters battlefield under your control, create a 4/4 green beast creature token. More power. He's a 6. You're playing in green, so you're going to be throwing lands out. Not to mention that there's actually some combos with him when you have Kodama out and you have a bounce land that give you infinite creature tokens. So you probably won't win because I don't have any way of haste in here. I don't believe, other than Akoma's Memorial. But depending on how much money you want to put into the deck, you could definitely get some other cards to give haste. Soul of the Harvest, 6/6 elemental trample, and it's going to get you a draw. Both May abilities, which I guess could matter, but it's probably not going to. You're going to want the draw. Sweet Gum Recluse, really nice to have that Cascade on here, plus it's flash, so this is a nice one just to be able to throw out and catch people off guard. You put 3/+1 counters on each of the creatures that enter the battlefield under control this turn. Usually doesn't make a big difference, but it can. Towering Titan, another one I added recently. When it enters the battlefield, it gets X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the total toughness of other creatures you control. You can sacrifice a creature with Defender, and all creatures gain trample until the end of turn. I have 0 defenders in here, but he's just in here because there's a lot of situations where you can go to combat, deal your damage, or even get the benefits of being in combat, and its second main phase, play him. and you'll see quite a few cards like Unnatural Growth on the side, for instance. This guy can just enter as a 50-60 or more easily. Um, Vigor, really good card. $11, so it's a little on the higher side for what I like to have for singles, but I was able to pull this from a pack, so I was pretty happy. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a 1/1 counter on it for each 1 damage prevented this way. And when he's put into the graveyard from anywhere, you shuffle it into the owner's library. The big thing about this is if I'm already going to be trampling over with damage, it makes it really hard for the opponents to be able to do anything when Vigor's out, because even if you're going to kill somebody, they're really not going to be able to do much. And even if they block your creatures, it's just going to make you more buffed up for the next guy. So it ends up causing a lot of issues. Beanstalk Giant. I love this card. This is one of my favorites. You get to search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle. Really important that it enters untapped. So it's really nice just to be able to get the forest out there. And then you can play him later as a creature that comes in that's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Could be a really, really strong heavy hitter, and 7 mana and ramps you out of lands, so this is pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. Always say this word wrong. Giant Edifage? Whatever. Yeah, he's a 7/7 trample that whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of him. This card really hasn't ever done anything too crazy for me, but it's a 7/7 that when it deals damage creates another 7/7, so just more for the opponents to have to deal with. This is another newer addition that I threw in here, my Moldgraf Monstrosity. Whenever it dies, you exile it and then return 2 creature cards at random from the graveyard to the battlefield. In this deck, as you've seen, most of the creatures are not something our opponents want on the battlefield. So throwing this down, even if they board wipe, I'm going to get 2 random creatures from my graveyard back. That could be enough to end them next turn. Molimo, Maro Sorcerer. He is a star toughness, or a star trample. Power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Again, just a big beefy guy to throw out there. Really strong. Already has trample on him, which is really nice. Nalia's Colossus. I don't run a lot of enchantments in here. I usually just use this just to buff up one of the big trample guys so that I'm sure that the damage is going to get through and it's going to be lethal damage. Whenever he or another enchantment enters battlefield under your control, double target creature's power and toughness until the end of turn. So this can be really devastating, even just if you have trample out and you use this on Kodama, it instantly makes him a 12/12. Not to mention if you have any other buffs going on. A 12/12 trample, it's hard to deal with. Thorn Mammoth, whenever it or another creature enters battlefield under your control, he fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Really nice removal. It's basically it. 6/6 trample, obviously over 7 CMC, so that's nice. Tree Shaker, Chimera. All creatures able to block it do so. When it dies, draw 3 cards. The drawing is actually the really nice part on this. Because all creatures able to block it have to, I usually have this thing killed. People do not allow me to go to combat with this on the field, so if they kill it, I get to draw 3 cards before anything happens, which is really nice and really beneficial in this deck. Not to mention, if they don't kill it, well, you're going to have to block it, and that means all my other big guys are getting through. Craterhoof Behemoth, not much to say. He gives your creatures trample +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. He's not a huge one in this deck like he is in a lot of other decks, like he would be in Elves and other weenie decks like that, but it's still really nice. He can easily still give +6 or 7 and trample until the end of turn, so he definitely causes a lot of issues. Enray's Forerunners. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. When it enters battlefield, other creatures get +2/+2 Vigilance and Trample until the end of turn. Another one of those cards you throw down that instantly your opponents are going to be worried about because they know that something bad is coming. Kamal, Heart of Krosa. At the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain Trample. You can pay 1 and a green until the end of turn. Target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature token with elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste that's still a land. I don't use the second part that often. It is actually very helpful if you have things going on that you can turn a couple lands into that, into creatures that are indestructible and vigilance. Go to combat, and then maybe you have unnatural growth out, or you drop one of the big crater hoofs and stuff like that. It can add a lot of damage. And obviously, if you use that ability before you go to combat, then you're going to get the +3/+3 and trample on those lands also. So even if you just throw 3 lands, that's for sure 3 lands that are 4/4 vigilance indestructibles. So that's really nice. Terrestodon enters battlefield. You blow up 3 non-creature permanents, and then you give them 3/3 green elephant creature tokens in their place. He's a 9/9. 3 removal is really good. An 8 drop is also really nice to have because I could drop down this and then on top of it drop a crater hoof, or I could drop any of these lower creatures down still. So all these big ones really are, these are the heavy hitters. When I drop something like this, it's usually the end of the game. I don't think I've ever dropped Kamal on the field and lost a match yet, but I'm sure it'll happen. The Titaneth Rex, it's a dinosaur beast, trample, it has cycle, so if you draw it too early, you could just cycle it out of your hand, not worry about it. When you cycle it, you put a trample counter on target creature control. Basically, he's there because if I'm able to drop this, it's gonna be that's gonna be the end of the game. That's a lot of damage. And if I draw it too early, I'll just get rid of it. It doesn't really matter. There is some graveyard recursion, as you've seen with the monstrosity, but it's mostly just there, just 11 damage. Apex Devastator. There's 2 other cards, I believe. 1 or 2 other cards in this deck that do a similar thing as Apex Devastator, where this card, Cascade, 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 Cascade. Basically, when you cast this, you're going to exile cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card with lesser CMC, and then you get to cast it for free. This one is a bit risky with the newer changes that have happened recently. When the card is on the stack, they can actually counterspell it, but most of the time I've never had any issue with it. The worst I think I've ever had is it went off and I got a few bad spells, but man, this card really is Devastator because you could drop anything from this, and I've used this and then cascaded into a Terrestodon. Mind you, you're going to cascade 4 times. If you use the commander for it, you're going to draw first on that, and then every cascade trigger, if you play a permanent like a creature or enchantment, you're going to be able to put something else down too. And worst case scenario, you're going to be putting down a land untapped off of the trigger from Kodama. So yeah, this finishes games for me 9 times out of 10. I actually played a game with my friend once, and he ended up psych rifting all of our stuff back to our board or our hands, and he put this right back in my hand. I told him, I was like, that's going to be an issue for you, and I just cast it next turn and flooded the board with 6 or 7 different things because all my things were psych rifted. Well, it doesn't really matter because Kodama is able to put it all back out there. Or worst case scenario, I get a cascade 4 times and have an apex on the battlefield still. Galta, he's a 12 cost creature that usually costs you 2 green. He costs X less, where X is total power of creatures you control. Even with Kodama out there and your commander, he still costs 7 less. And he usually costs more than 7 less. I think I've only paid more than 2 for him 1 time. And again, 12/12 trample, so that's a lot to deal with. Moving on to the sorceries, I have a Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. They're both just search for 2 lands, 1 on the battlefield, tap 1 into your hand. Typical green cards. Natural Order, I pulled this from the pack recently. This one's pretty good if you're trying to set up for the win. I haven't gotten to use it yet, but the thing I'm hoping to be able to do with it is use Gilanra for a spell, and then just use this to go search for Crater Hoof or any of the other Earthshaker Giant, something that is going to just seal the game for me. Overwhelming Stampede is a devastating card. This card is ridiculous. My friend Josh played this in one of his decks, and I thought this was like a $20 card when he first played it against me. He had it in his Animar deck, I believe. Until the end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get plus X, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. This usually does more for me than Craterhoof does, because chances are I have a creature with at least 6 power on the battlefield, so everything gets plus 6, and trample. This wins games easily. Shamanic Revelation, you get to draw a bunch of cards. You get 4 life for each creature with power 4 or greater, which the deck mostly consists of that. So this is just a nice card to draw you a ton, fill your hand for your Kodama triggers that you want to use, and then also the 4 life can actually make a big difference. If you gain 20-30 life, that can buy you a few turns. Traverse the Outlands, search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Usually it's going to be 6, so you're going to search for 6 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped. Very good for 5 mana. I mean, it's hard to beat that. Genesis Storm. This card is the first card I was looking through with the mono green. This is what made me want to build it with the 6 CMC and pick those commanders. You cast it, and when you cast it, you get to copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone. Usually you're going to play Gilanra, you're going to play a land, you're going to get set up with Kodama, and then you play this. You're going to reveal cards on top of your library until you reveal a non-land permanent. You may put that card onto the battlefield, then put all other cards revealed to the bottom of your library in a random order. So if you play this, you get 3 triggers off of it. You're going to have 3 triggers of creatures that are going to just get revealed off the top that you're going to put down, or artifacts or enchantments, and then every time you place that one down, it's not from Kodama's trigger, so you get to put another one from your hand. This could be very, very explosive. It could also be a dud, but it's usually not. Even if you get 6 free things onto the battlefield, you're pretty much going to be set for your next turn. Not to mention you could draw into removal and other things that'll really set you up, or a Caged Sun, Emerald Medallion that'll just make every other turn easier for you. Azuri's Predation. I haven't played this yet, but this is one of those cards when I was looking through my bin at randoms that I had laying around. I figured this card's got to do great work in this deck. 8 mana for each creature your opponents control. You create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Each of those beasts fights a different one of those creatures. You're going to have a lot of 4/4s hit the battlefield. There's a good chance that you might have an Akroma's Memorial, Caged Sun, or other things out that'll buff them. But even if you don't buff them, you're going to remove a lot of your opponent's things. My play group really doesn't run a lot of creatures greater than 4 power. So there's a good chance that I'm going to destroy a lot of their board, and I'm going to have a lot of 4/4 green beasts left over, which will really help out when you go to drop that Craterhoof next turn. On to the instants. I have an Autumn's Veil protection for your spells. Blue and black are the biggest things that are going to try to counter you and target your stuff for the most part, so it's very good to have in there. Nature's Claim, 1 mana, destroy target artifact or enchantment at instant speed. Your controller gains 4 life, but 4 life means nothing in this deck. Noxious Revival, you get to put target card from the graveyard on top of its owner's library. I mostly just used this to just put a card that I really didn't want to get countered or didn't want to get destroyed back on top. Maybe I put another buff back on top, or an Overwhelming Stampede because it got fogged, or Heroic Intervention. It's just a green staple that should go in a lot of decks. I just got this from my local game store when I was there. I was looking through and I noticed that I've never seen this card before. I've never seen anybody play it, and it just seems like a very strong card. Savage Summonings, it's 1 green instant, can't be countered, which is very good, especially if you play in a meta like I do that people run a lot of counter spells. The next creature spell you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash. That ability is really strong. 1 green mana, you're able to cast something at flash speed. I'm able to throw down Kodama a turn earlier than people think I would be able to, and it gets to enter with an additional +1 counter on it, which is just nice. It's an extra damage that will be able to help out possibly, but really you're able to put your commander down a turn early, or maybe you're able to throw down a Terrestodon that people didn't expect. And then that creature gets to enter and you get a Kodama trigger. So I haven't got to use it though, so hopefully it ends up working out and being a good card. Worldly Tutor, search for a green creature, put it on top of your library. Heroic Intervention, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. You need protection with this deck. I don't really run a ton of it because I try to run more of just resilience, where it doesn't really matter if someone blows up my board or if someone targets me, because I'm just going to keep throwing stuff out. A lot of games, it's been like a war of nutrition, and I have better things coming down the line, so it really doesn't matter if I lose a lot of my stuff, but Heroic Intervention is definitely necessary. It's an amazing card. Ram Through can be... this is one of my favorite cards from Ikoria. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control, and if the creature you control has trample, the excess damage is dealt to the creature's controller instead. You can easily ram through at instant speed during combat after everything's been buffed, and you could deal 20 plus damage to someone's face. You just ram through one of their weak creatures and let all that damage go through. I've used this quite a few times to kill off an opponent if they put something on the stack that I don't like. Maybe they go to counter spell something or return all creatures to their owner's hands. I'll just ram through at instant speed and possibly kill them. Even if you don't kill them, still to instantly deal 20 damage to someone is pretty hard to live past. And for 1 mana or 2 mana, it's at instant speed. Everything's gonna have trample. It's not often it doesn't, so it's a really good card. Rapid Vigor, regenerate each creature you control. Someone plays a board wipe, you just play this and you get to live through it. Beast Within, destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. It's the best removal spell for green, period. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much in every deck. Kalini's Ambush. Colony's Ambush. There we go. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. If you draw it too early, you play it as a land. If you have it later, you can just use it as a fight to remove something that's annoying you. Or maybe you want to get through with a little bit of extra damage and you just have something fight. Return of the Wild Speaker, 5 instant speed. You either draw cards equal to the greatest power amongst non-human creatures you control, which in this deck is usually between 6 and 12 depending. Can be a little bit more, but it's usually 6 or 12. Or you can use it to give all of your creatures, plus all non-human creatures you control, +3/+3 until the end of turn. So you can use it as a pseudo buff if you need to. Usually I use it to draw a ridiculously large amount of cards and then start doing more Kodama things. We'll go up to the artifacts. I run Soul Ring. It's Soul Ring. Emerald Medallion. All green spells cost 1 less to play that we have. Rona's Monument. Green creatures use... Yeah. Green creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until the end of turn. It's a nice little buff. It makes all your green creatures cost less, which you have 33 of, not including your commanders, so 35 in the deck. Those are the 3 reductions I play, I guess. Well, Soul Ring's not a reduction, but these are the 3 that I play, and Cage Sun, which you're obviously going to choose green. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever a land's ability causes you to add 1 mana of the chosen color, you add 1 additional mana of that color. So these are the 4 ramps that I like to play in this deck. You don't really need a lot of artifacts because it's green, and it's mono green especially. You can just run the ramps. If you wanted to put more smaller ramp spells in there, you could. I run Soul Ring just because it's Soul Ring and it's good. The Emerald Medallion, it does what it does. The Rona's Monument might be the weakest of the 3, just because we already have trample and it doesn't help out with the other ones, but I like having that pseudo trample just in case someone's really harping down on all of our effects. And I also run a Chroma's Memorial because why not? It's 7, so it'll trigger off of Gilanra. and you get to place a 7 down for free, which can be pretty good because a lot of those buffs are around the 7-6 range. Creatures you control gain flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, protection from black, and protection from red. So if you drop this and any of your friends are playing a Rakdos deck, they're not gonna like this. Not to mention the flying and first strike can be devastating. Vigilance, so you know that you're not gonna tap, so you're gonna have blockers still up there. It's another thing, gives trample. This is one of the things in the deck that does give haste. So if you have this out when you do the landfall triggers and you have infinite tokens with the rampaging Beowulfs, this will just win you the game. Enchantments, I run a Sylvan Anthem. Whenever a green creature enters, you get a scry 1. Just helps me get around the lands that I won't need late game. And green creatures get +1/+1. Just kind of irrelevant for the most part. I mean, 1 damage is nice, but it usually doesn't make or break it. Garruk's Uprising, one of the best cards in the deck. When it enters, if you have a creature power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Creatures you control have trample. Whenever a creature of power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. Almost everything's over 4, so almost every creature you play is going to get you a draw, which is going to be, you could choose to draw the card before your Kodama trigger, so it's really going to help out. Unnatural Growth, gross card. Absolutely disgusting. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until the end of your turn. This card is absolutely ludicrous in this deck. You buff the entire board with one of the creatures you drop, and then everything's +2, +2, +3, +3 or whatever until the end of turn. You go to combat and then everything doubles after that. This is ridiculous. I was playing against someone the other day and he was playing an Urza deck and I fell a little bit behind. He was staxing a little bit and he was causing some issues, and I was able to drop this off of the Kodama trigger, and unfortunately he was able to bounce it before I went to combat, but I told him that it would have been over 80 damage if I was able to go to combat. So yeah, that card is a beast in this deck. Lurking Praetors, this is a card I've thought about removing, but I'm still testing it out to see. It's a 6-drop, which is nice for the Gilanra and stuff. But whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card to the bottom of your library. It's nice. You get to put down a free creature if the top card is a creature, which won't enter from the Kodama trigger, so you'll get to place another creature down if you have one. The only thing is that I don't have a lot of situations, it seems like, where I top deck them. I did have a roll once where my opponents played 6 spells going around, and I was able to actually reveal 5 creatures off the top. Unfortunately, I think one of them had a cash trigger, like Apex Devastator, and if he gets revealed on this, he's just a dead card unless you place it on the bottom of your library, which, I mean, yeah, you don't get the cascading, but you're still going to put a 10-10 down. So, I don't know yet. I think this card's worth putting in there. Maybe if I had a couple more creatures, I'd feel a little bit better about it. Zendikar Resurgence. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add an additional one of that color. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. It's a very nice card to just throw down. This is another one of those ones that can just get out of hand. If you throw this down, you cast, draw, and you start to pop off. It's hard to do anything about that. And then we just have the lands. I'm currently running 35, 36 if you include the fight card. But this is something I've thought about changing a few times. I've actually cut, I think, 2 or 3 lands since I originally built it, so I'm still working on figuring out exactly how I like it. I have Castle Garenbridge. Enters tapped unless you control forest. You can tap it for a green, or you could tap 4, tap it, and add 6 green. You can only spend that to do creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. It's just an additional mana when I need it to be, and in some situations it can help out. It's not a necessary card at all, and it's just kind of there. You'll see this on my other deck techs when I go to make the videos, that I don't actually change the forests I have in there. So I don't actually have these forests, but I don't feel like going through and trying to find which ones I have throughout the list and everything. Guildless Commons. It's a land that when it enters, it's going to tap for 2 colorless. It's just like the Temple of the False Gods. It's basically in here, just like Myriad Landscape, just kind of. If I throw it down, I'm going to get some extra mana. But there's another card that's similar to Guildless Commons that allows you to bounce it back to hand. And this is the other card that works with the Rampaging Baloths to create infinite tokens. So if you wanted to go get the other ones that are very similar to this, they would all do the same thing. I think the only thing that isn't is possibly the land that's colorless in green, because I believe you have to sacrifice it when it enters unless you return an untapped forest to your hand. So I'm not sure how that would quite work out. I haven't looked into that too much. And Mosswort Bridge. It's easy to get above 10 power in this deck. So you get a hideaway, you look at the top 4 cards, put one exiled face down underneath that land. You could pay 1 green, tap this land, and then you could play that card for free. So it can be devastating. I mean, this card alone, you can have an Apex Devastator underneath it, and on turn 5 or 6, you could be just revealing an Apex and throwing it onto the field, cascading 4 times on top of that. Or I've had Chroma's Memorial underneath it before, or an Earthshaker Giant that I just throw out from underneath it. So this card could be very helpful. Plus, I mean, it's not often that the land entering tapped actually makes a difference in this deck. Usually you're pretty much set up and you're kind of throwing things out. So it's not an issue that it enters tapped. The Myriad Landscape, we already talked about a little bit. You could sack it and search for 2 basic lands that share a land type, put them on the battlefield. It enters tapped, which is kind of a downside, but if you're running a little bit behind, this will help you get a couple lands if you need to. And you're going to have above 5 lands, so Temple of the False Gods is just necessary in this deck. But that's everything on this. It ends up being $395.40 for these versions of all the cards I have. I'm assuming it would be a little bit lower. You could definitely run this deck below 200. I think mine was until I tore a couple decks apart. Like Noxious Revival came from another one of my decks. Allosaurus Shepherd was a birthday gift. So things like that, if you take that out, the price starts to drop significantly. Basically, if you were considering running a deck like this, I would just try to stick as much as you can towards that converted mana cost 6 or greater. Even if you just want to build the deck with as much 6 as you can, that'll help out a lot because you'll always be able to throw down another 6 for free. But the draw from this commander can really make a big difference because you need those cards in your hand for Kodama. But that's about it. If you guys want to leave any comments about cards maybe you think they would fit in the deck, maybe you run a similar deck and you run it differently. I've seen these commanders one time. I can't remember the YouTube channel, but the guy on there had this deck built kind of landfall, which I think is another really good way to run this. So if you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comments. Thank you.